James West here, reporting from Houston, Texas, for Climate Desk. Now, one of the biggest uncertainties in climate science right now is the role of clouds. What better way to work that part out than flying right through them? That's what NASA scientists aboard this airplane think. Welcome to NASA's biggest airborne laboratory. You're coming with us today on an 8-hour NASA flight mission.
When you read these big IPCC climate assessments, what's the biggest uncertainty? There's two, right? The role of aerosols and clouds. Clouds is probably bigger than aerosols.
That is a piece of a puzzle that right now we are missing.
You can't get the model to understand the chemistry and the process.
We've got to get on. The doors are about to shut, so let's go aboard. Every time you turn on the weather, every time you hear a climate change prediction, that information has to come from somewhere. And it starts by getting sucked out of the air from planes like this.
So this mission is to try to understand the emissions from the surface, so mostly biogenic emissions, so from trees and other plants.
Right now we're flying to our very first part of this experiment on the DC-8. Over Arkansas, there's a particularly pungent bouquet of emissions that scientists are interested in measuring.
Well, these emissions lead to both aerosols and to molecules that both destroy and create ozone. So these are very important things to understand for climate studies.
How it will manifest itself, it will be in more accurate and more reliable predictions.
So what we're doing is taking a series of flyovers, each at a different level of the atmosphere, scooping up those emissions, testing them, and hopefully scientists are going to see exactly what's in this column of air all the way up.
The data that we collect in one flight can keep busy 60 scientists and students for 3 years, 4 years. We're still studying data from data collected 20 years ago.
In fact, this particular mission today is its most heavily equipped in its nearly 30 years of service. Each one of these consoles here is a specially equipped scientific instrument designed to collect all sorts of different data in real time.
And this instrument here tracks the sun.
We're looking at mist chambers. They're used to strip soluble gases.
This black line is the CO2. It's about 390 ppm right now.
We're putting these filters in the bags that we've got the aerosols that we trapped out of a certain amount of air. And so we're sampling up here about 150 liters a minute.
That ultimately flows back into the operational models. It flows back into what goes on TV every day.
Anyway, I got to get this sample going.
You do it. It's a busy man at work. We can't let him rest. Well, get this. We've just spent 2 hours crisscrossing this one cloud formation. In, back out again, back in again.
Then they grow, and we track them as long as we can, and then we let it go.
Even one cloud can hold a host of answers to the mysteries of climate change.
The patterns of, where the clouds are, what type of clouds we see, what kind of weather systems they're associated with it, that'll all be shifting in a shifting climate, in a world with climate change.
Then the big spark is this, is when we actually get the meat on the grill. And then it will be some time to process it.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Here we go on Thursday, May 14. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bill Press Show. Good to have you back and good to see you this Thursday morning on Free Speech TV and worldwide on our video stream, Talker TV, youtube.com/Talker, TAWKR TV. The latest on the Amtrak crash in Philadelphia. Now we know up to 7 dead, almost 200 were injured somewhat. That's with a passenger total of 238 people on board that train, plus 5 crew members. We now know also that that train was going around the curve at 106 miles an hour when the posted speed limit is 50 miles an hour. We still don't know what happened. An investigation is underway, but certainly the speed appears to be the cause of that crash. And yet, yesterday, even though the infrastructure for Amtrak is so old and badly needed of repair, the House Republicans yesterday voted to cut Amtrak's budget for next year by 20%, so we can have more accidents like this. President Obama today, after a big dinner at the White House last night, is off to Camp David with the leaders from the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait, and others that are here for a one-day summit up at Camp David. The president and the Gulf leaders will hold a news conference this afternoon at 5 p.m. to announce results of their summit. Meanwhile, just 24 hours after President Obama's trade deal crashed in the Senate Democratic leaders have come to a compromise agreement with the White House, which will permit that trade deal to get through the Senate, but it's going to have a much, much tougher time in the House of Representatives. And the House yesterday did a good thing, voted to end NSA's massive spying on your phone calls and mine. All of that to talk about and a whole lot more here on this Thursday edition of the Bill Press Show. Good to have you with us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
We came here to Foster City, where we're going to watch UC Berkeley, a University of California SWAT team, do a hostage rescue scenario.
All personnel will wear the proper protective equipment. This includes all personnel identified as staff, students, role players, VIPs, and support staff. Please, eyes, gloves, and drawing protection is mandatory and should be worn at all times by personnel directly involved in or near the scenario. Always check your mask prior to use to ensure there are no cracks and the mask is in safe working conditions.
Should I put the water in there now? Yeah, go ahead. This is like some kind of chemical agent? Yeah.
Copy, we're ready. I'm gonna get shot. I already know it, dude. Fiend's yelling at me.
Help me. Your hands. Help me. Your hands. Back away.
Gentlemen, we have a chemical. We need to pull our person out. Get these guys out of here. Pull them out.
Put your hands on your face. Put your hands on your face.
Keep him covered.
Your head up. He's got a shotgun back there.
That's all right. Keep his hands up where we can.
Hands on your face.
Hands on your face. On your face.
Someone cover me. I got a holster up, bro.
Okay, pull him around the corner. Pick him up. Get him out of the building. Quickly. We've got this. Let's get that guy out of there. You, come towards us. Keep your hands on your face. Turn around. Face away from us. Back towards us. Quickly. Back up towards me. Quickly. Pull him out of the room.
We're exfilling, Billy?
Yes, we are exfilling.
It was actually around 92, 94. There was an attack on the chancellor at his residence, which is on campus.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And we realized at the time that we didn't have any resources to deal with that kind of threat when it took place.
Okay.
So, and I think about 15 years before, they had some kind of semblance of a SWAT team.
Uh-huh.
So they regenerated the idea of
I see.
activating a SWAT team.
And then since then, you guys have kind of branched out to doing what kind of stuff?
Well, since then, we train for everything. We train for every eventuality, barricaded subjects. Like I said, most of what we do is high-risk warrants.
Okay. And it's something like, it could be like a mugging kind of thing, just like on the street?
Depends. I mean,
like
a mugging, but if it's armed, particularly.
Right, an armed mugging, yeah.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
And then, obviously, we're looking for training for anything else that we might be faced with. And that's what's great about Urban Shield is, we couldn't duplicate this on our own.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Goodbye, NSA super snooping. At least that's what the House of Representatives yesterday saying to kill the massive phone collection program. God, they finally did something right. Hey, hello, everybody. What do you say? Oh, it's Thursday, May 14. So good to see you today, and good to have you with us here on the special Thursday edition of the Bill Press Show. We are here with you on your local progressive talk radio station. So good to see you this Thursday morning. And we're here with you on Free Speech TV nationwide and worldwide on our video stream, Talker TV, youtube.com/Talker TV. You're looking good this morning. Thanks for getting up early and joining us. I know you want to find out what's going on. We'll tell you what's going on. The latest with the Amtrak crash up in Philadelphia. The latest on NSA and on the trade deals here in Washington, D.C. The latest on the big summit up at Camp David today and everything else that's happening around the country, around the world, here in Washington, D.C. You will be informed by the end of this program with everything that's going on, and we hope to be inspired by your comments as to what you think about it all. Join the conversation. Don't just sit back and listen. Speak out at 866-55-PRESS. Send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show or on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy joining us here, leading Team Press.
Hello, Bill.
Hey, good morning. Happy Thursday.
Yes,
Thursday. Man, we're rolling along here. Yeah. And Jamie Benson. You always smile. You don't think I know his name?
I'm just impressed that you remembered his name.
Jamie
Eighth
Benson.
time's a charm.
The new guy.
The new guy.
New fish.
That's what I was just going to say. The new guy on the phones. Right, Jamie Benson. And Monty Kanzler filling in for Cyprian Balding today as our videographer of the day. Good to have you all on board. Indeed, there is so much to talk about. President Obama entertaining the leaders of the Gulf states yesterday at the White House for dinner, and then they go up to Camp David today. And we're getting ready for that. It's a year and a half from now, right? Change of leadership in the White House, and it could very well end up being, not guaranteed, could very well end up being Hillary Clinton, the next president of the United States, which would be great. And that does, again, raise the question of, what about Bill? What role would Bill have? David Letterman had some thoughts on that last night.
Interesting thing about the Clintons, a political dynasty. It could be a political dynasty. Bill Clinton, former president, might move back into the White House while someone else is running the country.
How about that?
Huh? Think about that.
Yeah, think about that.
Living in the White House while somebody else is, I mean, it's like George W. Bush.
Oh, yeah.
That's an old joke.
Cheney was living up the street.
Never gets old.
I know. But you know what? True.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, great lineup today. Congressman Javier Becerra from California, part of the Democratic leadership, here in the studio with us. Susan Page from USA Today will join us a little bit later in this hour. Talk about the news of the day, of course. And then we'll be talking also with CBS correspondent Kris Van Cleave, who's on the scene in Philadelphia, has been covering the details of the Amtrak crash. All of that coming up, but first...
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. It was a big day for sports here in Washington, D.C. yesterday. 4 professional sports teams with games yesterday.
Whoa.
The Nationals, they beat the Diamondbacks. The Wizards taking on the Hawks, which they lost 82-81.
Sadly.
Which means
Great
the Hawks
game,
are up 3 games to 2 in that series. We also have the Capitals, who lost in overtime to the Rangers in Game 7. So that means they are out. They are eliminated. They are no more. And we had D.C. United.
Whoa.
The soccer team.
Yeah.
And they won yesterday. They beat Orlando 2-1.
Okay.
So it's a split. The Nationals and United won. The Hawks and the Rangers both lost. Of course, the 2 that lost are in the playoffs, so those hurt a little bit more. So.
But the Wizards are still alive.
Wizards are still
alive.
alive.
Caps are dead. And
Caps
DC United, is there a playoff in soccer? No.
Yeah, there will be, but this is where we're early.
Yeah, we're early.
Okay, yeah.
And what, the Wizards play Friday?
Wizards play again on Friday, I believe. Yeah.
All right.
Is it tomorrow? Yeah. They're still in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Some scary news for fans of The Simpsons. Harry Shearer, the voice of many Simpsons characters, might be leaving the show.
No.
So they're not sure if this is like a, negotiation tactic, but he's given them notice that he's ready to leave when his contract is up. He's the voice of Mr. Burns, Ned Flanders, a lot of other really big names on the show, and basically if he leaves, I don't know how they replace him.
I was just going to say, what can you do?
I don't know. I really don't know, because this is the thing with The Simpsons is all of the main characters or main voice actors, they play a couple of different roles. So if he was to leave...
You have a voice transplant? I don't know.
Simpsons has been on the air for whatever, 30 years or something, so they might have enough tape from him to just, string stuff together.
Did they say why he's leaving?
He says he's just tired of being locked into The Simpsons because he feels like he can't do other things because it's such a commitment to do The Simpsons. So he wants to do other stuff. He's a very political guy, by the way. He's done comedy albums and song parodies and things like that. And so he's saying he wants more time to do
I knew
that.
him in L.A. Not that well, but he was a
funny guy.
Great figure.
Funny guy. And if you are a parent of an obese child, a new study shows that you probably don't realize it yet. This is a stunning number by this study. This study was put out by Dustin Duncan at the NYU Langone Medical Center. He led the research. That 95% of parents believe that their kid's size is just right, even though they are actually obese. 95% of parents think that their kids are in great shape, doing just fine, when in fact they are obese. Scary numbers, right?
That is, yeah.
95%.
No wonder you can't do anything about obesity.
Right. Don't even realize they have a problem.
Love is so they say. Hey, here we go. 13 minutes after the hour. I wanted to take a look at the latest on the Amtrak crash up in Philadelphia, and also get your thoughts on our nation's lack of commitment to public transit and to infrastructure in general, but particularly looking at transit today. On the scene of the crash in Philadelphia, the latest, we heard yesterday, yesterday afternoon, midday maybe, that the death toll had gone up to 7. There were almost 200 people who required medical attention, some of them critical. Remember, that's stunning, with a total passenger load of 238 and a crew of 5. So almost everybody on that train, was shaken up somewhat and suffered some sort of injury. Again, I've taken that route so many times. This train left Washington at 7:10 p.m. Tuesday evening. First stop for that regional train is sometimes at New Carrollton. Don't know whether this one stopped at New Carrollton, which is about 10 minutes out. 15 minutes out, it always stops the regional train at BWI Airport. 15 minutes later, it gets into downtown Baltimore. And then it's about an hour and 20 minutes, maybe, up to Wilmington, Delaware. Beautiful. That's the most beautiful part of the run, I think, between Baltimore and Wilmington. And then it's another 20 minutes up to Philadelphia. So this train got into Philadelphia about 9:15, a little over 9:10 or so. At 9:21, north of 33rd Street Station is when it went off the tracks, going around a curve. And we learned yesterday from Bob Sumwalt, who's a member of the National Transportation Safety Board. They, of course, are on the scene leading the investigation. We learned that going around that curve, Sumwalt tells us, here's what the noted speed limit was.
Maximum authorized speed through this curve was 50 miles per hour.
And he continues, at the time of the crash,
The train was traveling at approximately 106 miles per hour.
Whoa. Yeah.
3 seconds later, when the data to the recorders terminated, the train speed was 102 miles per hour.
3 seconds later, because the engineer, we know, had pulled the emergency brake, but we don't know what caused the train to go that fast, whether it was the engineer himself who was just a little bit of a joyride, or because there was a malfunction in the throttle or whatever. But one thing we do know, there is a system called positive train control, which would prevent an accident like that. It prevents a train from exceeding the speed limit. Mm-hmm. It is in place, ironically and tragically, in almost all of the Northeast Corridor except this stretch of track. And the NTSB has asked over and over and over again that this the system be applied system-wide, but they didn't get around, for some reason, never got around to this part of the track. Senator Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut points out this is what we needed.
The NTSB has issued recommendations, one after the other, more than 60 now, that have never been implemented, like positive train control.
And back to Robert Sumwalt of the NTSB says, had it been there?
Based on what we know right now, we feel that had such a system been installed in this section of track, this accident would not have occurred.
Sad to think that just that one little bit of technology could have saved those lives and could have saved that crash and all that disruption of the Northeast Corridor. But, so we don't know. It's important to recognize we do not know whether it was the fault of the engineer, whether it was some equipment malfunction that led to this crash. But it still does raise the question of the condition of Amtrak, of the track bed, of our infrastructure, particularly our rail infrastructure in this country, nationwide. But looking at the Northeast Corridor, as I saw, CBS News did a great job last night of lining this up. Some of the cars, to be charitable, some of the cars that they're still using in the Northeast Corridor are antique.
Yeah.
Right? The fact is, the bridges and the tunnels that they're using are over 100 years old. And remember Chris Christie, who blocked the funding.
Sure did.
To improve or to build a new tunnel from New Jersey into New York. I think there's just like a 2-track tunnel that goes in there now that all these trains go through. So, the system is just woefully outdated and inadequate. The signal system, the signals on the Northeast Corridor for the train service on the Northeast Corridor predate World War II. Imagine that. Predate World War, and this is the most traveled rail corridor in the country. There are, and we were just talking about this earlier. None of us can believe this number, but it is a number. In the Northeast Corridor, there are 2,200 trains a day go over that route. Now, there are commuter trains, those are freight trains, those are passenger trains. 750,000 passengers a day on that route. And yet, we have no commitment to improving the service there, improving the infrastructure, or just basic maintenance that it needs.
Can you imagine if we were still flying in planes that were
pre-World
War II?
Yeah. Imagine what you're... Yeah.
They would never stand.
Right.
Never.
No. And overall, for example, Amtrak. The Amtrak has said, okay, to upgrade the Northeast Corridor, here's what it would take: $2.6 billion just for that Northeast Corridor. So we're talking really Washington, D.C. up to Boston, let's say. $2.6 billion. The entire budget for Amtrak last year, nationwide, every rail line, was $1.4 billion. And this year, Congress, just yesterday, so these Republicans in Congress are not just hard-headed, they're hard-hearted. Just yesterday, less than 24 hours after this crash, Republicans in the House yesterday voted to cut the Amtrak budget by 20% for next year.
Great timing.
Yeah, and they're already woefully inadequate compared to what we need. And just putting it in total perspective in terms of our commitment to rail particularly, China, the last 7 years, China has spent $104 billion. This is since President Obama, as part of the stimulus package, right, said we're going to commit to high-speed rail in this country. Remember when Ray LaHood was secretary at the time, and he led the charge. So since that time, China has spent. Now this is the United States saying we're going to get serious about high-speed rail. China has spent $104 billion. The United States has spent $11 billion. I mean, when it comes to public transit, when it comes to, and that's, buses, streetcars, trains, commuter trains, regional trains, high-speed rail, when it comes to public transit, we are a third world country. When you look at China, you look at Japan, they've got these trains that go 200 miles an hour. Never hearing about any troubles with those. In Europe, you can travel all over Europe in these fast trains. And here we are in this country, just crawling along.
We're just okay with it.
Yeah.
We just accept it.
Absolutely. Third world country. Why? Why do we accept it? What can we do about it? What do you think about it? 866-55-PRESS. Let's talk about it. This is important stuff here on the Bill Press Show, Thursday morning.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Silicon Valley, Santa Clara County is often portrayed as a role model for the rest of the country. The county has some of the highest salaries and most expensive real estate in America, thanks in large part to the phenomenal success of tech companies such as Google, Yahoo, Intel, Adobe, and of course Apple, the nation's wealthiest and most profitable company. But Santa Clara County also has a more unseemly distinction. I'm standing near downtown San Jose, inside what is by some accounts the largest homeless encampment in America. The Jungle, as it's known, occupies a 65-acre stretch of creek where about 300 people live in makeshift structures. It's less of a homeless encampment than a full-blown shantytown.
This being the largest homeless encampment in the United States, and with us having Silicon Valley with Steve Jobs and all this cash, we're not supposed to have this kind of homeless problem. You know what I mean?
I done been shot with a pellet gun like 4 times, attacked with baseball bats, my house set on fire.
This is like hell on earth. I mean, this is like something you will not see. You have to see to believe, actually. It's like fourth world conditions.
Hi, have you ever heard of a place called the Jungle?
Sorry?
A place called the Jungle, have you heard of it?
We're not making enough money really for conventional homes or housing, and we make too much money for subsidized homes. So we're kind of, floating between the oil and the water.
We told the landlady here if it would be possible to continue staying here. She said, no, you got to go. I already rented it out. We went and loaded things into a storage facility, and it's still there. And all the campgrounds and things that we saw were too far out of the city, like KOAs and that sort of thing. So what we decided to do was to move into the jungle. So that's what we did.
A few days ago, a woman named Lydia Hernandez was robbed inside of her tent. When she refused to hand over the money, the robbers slit her throat. When she still fought back, they bashed her head with an axe. She died a few hours later. Residents say that the police never come into the jungle, so they have to fend for themselves.
There's no law down there except our own, right? There's no law, so we could smoke dope all day in the open. You know, the dope dealers ain't scared because they're secure.
We go to the Fairmont Hotel and have a brunch or do a philanthropy. That's not going to cut it. We need billions of dollars to go into the inner cities and go into the jungle. Silicon Valley, the Bay Area is known for its innovation, its progressive thinking. It's one of the most progressive pockets in the United States, if not the world, and certainly one of the wealthiest. If we can't do it here, it won't happen anywhere. It's got to happen here.
Visit Red.
This is the Bill Press Show.
27 minutes after the hour. What is it about? What don't people get? Why has it become a partisan issue about upgrading our rail system and keeping our trains, making our trains the best in the world? Right?
Yeah.
You know. Why is it that
really
we want to
does.
be everything? We want to be number one in the world, and yet we're civil war when it comes to mass transit.
Why? Yeah, I don't
crazy.
understand that. We build these
No.
giant skyscrapers. We spend so much money on other things. Like, just invest some money in infrastructure.
Yeah. Let's go out to Chicago. Say hello to Joey. Hey, Joey, how are you? What do you say? Oh, what? I'm sorry. All right, I'm sorry. Joey, we'll get to you in a second. Yeah, here we go. Joey, what's up?
Okay, guys. The Republican Party has turned us into a third world country. They won't spend any money on bridges, roads, or infrastructure, but they'll give it out to the oil companies and the bankers so they can write them campaign checks. The American people have to stand up for themselves and turn this country back into America.
Yeah, I love it when they say they don't have any money. Yeah, but they got lots of money when it comes to tax breaks for the wealthiest of Americans, or for the oil companies, or people want to park their money overseas, or lots more money for defense systems that we don't need, and even the generals in the Pentagon say we don't need. Yeah, how about spending a little bit on our infrastructure?
This is
More
the
calls
Bill
coming
Press
up.
Show.
Officer, were you the one who arrested me? Gonna shake my hand? So I got invited to host a vigil called Carry the Names. And that's what they were doing, carrying the names of the people who were victims of deadly police force. Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Akai Gurley. I got a motion from Dragonfly from Stop Shopping Choir, and I started preaching. I preached up a storm as best I could, but about a minute and a half into my sermon, the place was flooded with police, Homeland Security, National Guard, state troopers, and I was pushed over and handcuffed so fast, down in the jail, down in the basement. Before you know it, I was out the door, put in prison overnight. The next morning, I'm in court, the same thing happens. I'm just rushed out of there. Then our lawyer, Wiley Steckler, gives me this iPhone. And there, in black and white, in the Gothamist, a popular paper, is this charge by Adam Lisberg, the MTA law enforcement spokesperson for this grand place. His quote is that I, Reverend Billy, physically attacked a police officer. Unbelievable. The feeling of being robbed of my work and life and identity, just the fiction. I did not touch anybody. I did not look. I know how to do this. I'm trained in nonviolence. I did not do anything. It was right here. It was right here. It happened right here. I was simply arrested while I was speaking and taken away, and that's it. The cold feeling in my city, the city that I love, that city spokespersons whose salary I pay for with my taxes, that they would say this. I can just feel the rending apart of the community, that we are not that close. We're not. They are willing to say this, and they think that they can just say anything about anybody and get away with it. So we have something in the Church of Stop Shopping called radical forgiveness. Amen?
Cops and bankers love their children.
I forgive the police.
We gotta love them too. Cops and bankers love their mothers.
But I'll stay radical.
Mothers love their brothers. We gotta love them too.
But we'll wake up every morning forgiving each other, reaching out, touching, telling stories, having humor, being in a community together, sharing our children, sharing the streets, sharing the climate, being in the city together. But forgiving each other, being grateful to each other, helping each other out, living together, living together.
I got a daughter just turned 4. What do we do in the superstore? What do we do with the blood and the gore? The water's rising through our door. Love our children too. Love our children too.
Amen. Earth-alleluia.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
What do you say? Here we are at 34 minutes now after the hour. The crash in Amtrak, of the Amtrak train up in Philadelphia, which may have been caused by engineer error. We don't know. but certainly raises a question of our infrastructure and what we are doing about it, which is absolutely nothing. In fact, yesterday, less than 24 hours after the crash, Republicans in the House of Representatives, believe it or not, voted to cut Amtrak's overall national budget by 20%, which just underscores the lack of commitment we have in this country. We hear it all the time, to rebuilding our infrastructure. It just doesn't make sense, whether we're talking bridges or roads, highways, rail lines, tunnels, signal systems. This is the way we get around. This is important to save lives, and it's important for our commerce as well. And it's just become such a partisan football. Democrats have been trying to say, let's at least fund Amtrak with the level that it needs to operate safely. Republicans have refused to do so. And I remember Ray LaHood, President Obama's first Secretary of Transportation, great guy, a Republican congressman from Illinois, who came into the briefing room of the White House when he was Secretary of Transportation, and he made the point. He said, I was chairman of the Transportation Committee in the House for many years. I don't remember a Republican road or a Democratic road.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, this is not a partisan issue. He said this is something we all, and he was making the plea for his fellow Republicans to approve the transportation funding bill, which used to be automatic almost. I mean, everybody, Republicans, Democrats, would support it because, of course, they knew it was good. Again, saved lives, and it was good for the communities, good for business. Everybody depended on it, but now it's just become a political football, which it should not be. And so here we go. Again, you have Democrats saying we have to. And talk about the jobs it would create, too, rebuilding infrastructure. Democrats saying we got to make sure that Amtrak's got the money it needs to operate safely. Republicans cutting it 20% yesterday. Peter.
We're on Twitter at BP Show. At BP Show. Make sure you're following along. You can chime in there. We'll read your comments. On the idea of infrastructure, Phil says the way that we treat infrastructure is, quote, American exceptionalism, end quote, at its worst.
Mm-hmm.
Jim says the GOP claims they want to protect American people from terrorists, but protection from a crumbling infrastructure, not so much. And Jessica says, can we also just mention the jobs that infrastructure work will produce? There's also that.
Yep. Congressman John Garamendi told us yesterday, 70,000, but we're talking now the Highway Trust Fund, which expires, I think, in about 6 days. And Republicans have made no commitment to refund the highway trust funds. All of that gas tax money, which goes to states to maintain our roads and highways, right? They can't count on it anymore because of Republican obstruction in the House of Representatives. That alone would be 70,000 jobs for California. But it's true. Look, I've been to China just one day, but I've really never been to China. I've never been to Japan. But they've got their high-speed rail trains that go 200 miles an hour, crisscrossing the entire country. China spending $104 billion building new high-speed rail systems, right? Or you go to Europe. I've taken trains all over Europe. You leave Paris, you're in Marseille in an hour and a half on the TGV, and it's just incredible. It's embarrassing for the United States to be so far behind. Robert. In Naples, Florida. Robert, what do you say?
Good morning, Bill, and good morning, America. I'm okay with spending money on maintaining what we have, but the reality is that we're such a vast country that air travel is better and cheaper than train travel. I mean, think about it. Would you rather get on a train from L.A. and go to New York, or would you rather fly and be there in 6 hours?
Well, Robert, look, we are a vast country, but you cannot. I don't think you can make that statement nationwide. There are. Let me tell you, for example, to go from Washington to New York, which maybe 500,000 people do every day, 3 times as many people take the train. You know why? Because you get there faster and cheaper, and you leave the middle of Washington and you end up in the middle of New York. You're not at some outlying airport. So there are connections. This isn't the only one where it makes more sense to take the train. I think we need all of the above. You know, it's not that we're just going to do away with trains and just depend on planes everywhere. No. I mean, this, Carter, let me tell you, San Francisco, Sacramento, it's made for high-speed rail. Doesn't exist. L.A., San Diego, made for high-speed rail.
Can you imagine
doesn't exist.
If we had put the effort into high-speed rail that other countries have, where we'd be today, job-wise, economy-wise, you know, like so many missed opportunities there. For what?
Yeah. I mean, you look at Florida. It's a state made for high-speed rail, right? I don't know Florida well enough to know what the commute lines are, where they would be, but I mean, certainly Miami, you know, up to West Palm Beach and that area. I mean, that's
but
huge
even like, you know,
Chicago,
but like
up
even
and down
Florida,
the
like
lake,
Miami to Tampa, you know, it's just a straight shot up the peninsula there. D.C. to New York, a high-speed rail situation.
Yeah.
Just imagine.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty way to travel, too. You can really see the country that way.
It is. Yeah. But so, sure, Robert, I agree. Yeah. If I'm going to L.A., I don't even consider the train. If I'm going to New York, I don't consider a plane.
Right.
So it's just but you need it. You need it all. And ignoring our infrastructure, again, roads, bridges, tunnels, signal systems, highways, train bed is just at our own peril. Hey, on another front, just a couple of things we wanted to mention. By the way, on that front of Amtrak, in the next hour, we'll be talking with Kris Van Cleave, who is the transportation correspondent for CBS News. He is on the scene in Philadelphia. Was at the top of the CBS News last night with Scott Pelley, and he'll be joining us in the next hour. Stay tuned for that. Some good news in the House of Representatives yesterday. We'll also be talking with a representative from the ACLU at the top of our third hour together today. The House voted yesterday overwhelmingly to end NSA's collection of all of our phone data, this massive, which Edward Snowden told us about. The vote in the House, it was a overwhelming bipartisan vote, 338 to 88. Republicans and Democrats joining together to say that what NSA was doing was wrong and should not continue any longer. Now, under this bill, which is called the USA Freedom Act, James Sensenbrenner from Wisconsin and John Conyers from Michigan, Republican and Democrat, were the co-sponsors in the House. Patrick Leahy, Democrat, and Mike Lee, Republican, are the sponsors in the Senate. This bill would say that the phone companies could continue to collect the data, but the private phone company, would keep all the data. It would not be public record unless NSA went to them and said, we have a suspicion that Peter Ogburn is a terrorist and in touch with a terrorist group, and so we want his phone records. Then those phone records could, and they went to a court and got that search warrant, then Peter's phone records could go to the NSA. But otherwise, our government would not be doing the super snooping, spying anymore. That bill goes to the Senate, where it will probably also pass, and President Obama has indicated he would support it. Now, the only thing left again is to stop treating Edward Snowden as a traitor and bring him back and recognize him as a whistleblower. Susan Page is standing by. Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today coming up next.
This is the Bill Press Show.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts, but what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use. It's a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Okay, you want to know what's happening worldwide, nationwide in the news? Just pick up USA Today or go online to usatoday.com. You want to know what's happening in Washington, D.C.? You watch Capital Download on Sunday mornings on WUSA 9 at 8:30 a.m. with Susan Page, or you just catch Susan on the Bill Press Show every Thursday morning at this time. Hello, Susan.
So I'm not paying you enough for those plugs. You deserve a raise.
That's it. You can record them and use them, Susan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine. So the president had a little embarrassment in the Senate this week. Susan, I would have to say that this strategy maybe of the president attacking Elizabeth Warren didn't work out that well.
You know, he ended up yesterday getting pretty much what he wanted on the trade deal, it looks like, but some damage, right, to his Democratic colleagues. Have you heard a president use language like that?
No.
About a senator of the same party? I mean, you barely hear them talk about senators from the other party with the kind of language he was using about Elizabeth Warren. And I just wonder what the strategy is here, because, you know, there's a reaction not just from her, but from the people who now identify themselves as members of the Elizabeth Warren wing of the Democratic Party.
Yes, and it's certainly, you're right. So after the defeat in the Senate, right, he called the senators, the so-called pro-trade senators, right, who also abandoned him, of course. The fact that he got one Democrat out of 45 is pretty embarrassing. So he calls him down to the White House, and they compromised. They made a deal. So this thing is going to get out of the Senate. But I do think that language hurt him even more with Democrats in the House.
So I have a question. What do you think they gave Tom Carper so they would not be able to say that every single Democrat voted against the president?
Maybe
I suspect he's the next vice president of the United States.
Or maybe he wants to be ambassador, right? Before.
Here's another question.
I don't know.
If the White House had handled this differently, could they have gotten to success without that big rebuke?
I believe so. Right. Because I'll tell you, every Democratic senator and every Democratic member of the House that we've talked to on the program here, or that I've talked to privately, has just really been offended by the fact that President Obama was out on the road, on television, and everywhere, attacking them for their questions, and also insisting that they were dead wrong, that this was not a document that everybody knew what was in it, so what's the big deal? The fact is, you and I don't know what's in it, Susan. You know?
That's right. A lot of material is secret from us, although members of Congress can go read it themselves. That's not exactly transparent.
No, on very restricted terms they can read it. As you know, they can't talk about it. They can't take any staff with them. They can't take a cell phone. They can't take any notes, right? So
and also, this isn't like deciding to declare war against Hitler. There are two sides on this issue.
Yes.
And Democrats and others who argue that there are problems with these trade deals, that they haven't been good for the average Joe, that they've contributed to the economic disparities we see in the country now. Those are legitimate concerns that ought to be heard and considered.
Right. I found it amusing that now the White House is calling this the Progressive Trade Promotion Authority. Right? They've adopted the word progressive because they want to.
The thing is, just adding the word doesn't necessarily persuade everyone that it is so.
Thank you. Yes, that was my point entirely. I noticed that you interviewed for the show this week, Michael Morrell, former top guy at the CIA, about did you talk to him about this NSA and the court decision last week, and now we have the big House vote yesterday?
Yeah, well, his 33 years in the CIA. He was hired by the CIA when he was 21 years old. He had 2 stints as acting director. He was the guy who was with George W. Bush when he heard about the 9/11 attacks. He was with Barack Obama in the Situation Room when Osama bin Laden was killed. So here's a guy.
What a window on history, huh?
Here's a guy who's been at the center of the big challenges that the country has faced when it comes to terrorism and national security. He supports the House bill that was passed yesterday that ends the government's collection of all your telephone data.
Oh, he does.
It means that telephone companies still hold it, and intelligence agencies can search it if they have a reason to. But it ends the system that has been so controversial over the past 10 years. But, we've now goes to the Senate, and Mitch McConnell has been saying he wants to just extend the current law. Expires on June 1st, and I think there's a fair amount of concern that Washington, and this will stun you, will be unable to reach an agreement, and that the program will simply expire.
Right. Yeah, that Section 215 expires on June 1 unless they do something, right?
Yeah, right.
And this bill, now, my understanding is that the president also supports this legislation, the so-called USA Freedom Act, correct?
Yes, that's right. It's in a way it's kind of a compromise. It allows this metadata, telephone calls, not the content of calls, but when they were made, to whom, how long they lasted. It allows that system to continue to be used by a tool, but it tries to remove some of the concerns about a big government database that includes your phone calls and my phone calls and everybody's phone calls, and the of abuse of that. So we'll see what happens. It's a case where the House and Senate are at some odds. But one thing that has made Congress sometimes act is a ticking clock of a deadline, and there is a clock ticking on this one.
Well, when you look at this bill passed the House yesterday, 338 to 88. That's got to be a message to NSA that we don't like the super spying, right? Republicans and Democrats. So I sort of think it'll get through the Senate despite Mitch McConnell's opposition. So, Susan, always good to have you with us. Thanks for catching us up to date. Okay, we'll see you Sunday morning.
Thanks.
All right, at 8:30 a.m. on WUSA 9. Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today, USA.com. USAtoday.com. We call her David Jackson's boss.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Before now, it's been difficult for criminals like us to know which states have loose gun laws. How would a criminal like me know which states permit me to carry loaded guns in their amusement parks, golf courses, or beaches?
I have some violent friends. We all wear leather jackets and scream at women. And we want to find out which states we can buy and sell guns easily.
CrimAdvisor.com. That's the site to find out where it's easiest for felons and fugitives to buy, carry, and even traffic guns.
That's why I love Arizona, where I can go see the beautiful Grand Canyon and carry a loaded gun without even having to get a background check.
You would fail that background check.
I'm sure of it. Now, what about a road trip? What states can I go to fill my trunk with guns and take it back home for my even more dangerous friends?
CrimAdvisor has a list for that.
That's so unreasonable.
Our traffickers' top 10.
Nevada! What happens in Vegas may have to stay in Vegas, but your guns don't. Bring them over to California and sell them.
The market up there is hungry for guns.
I understand that CrimAdvisor.com will tell me which states really cater to us criminals and creeps, but what about the states where we're not so welcome? The ones that don't get us?
I don't even like saying the name of these states, but California, Connecticut, Maryland, and New York all have laws to keep guns out of the hands of people like us.
I want to shoot California so bad.
Boo, California.
Boo, go home. Wow. CrimAdvisor.com has all this information?
Sure does.
CrimAdvisor.com. Plan your perfect getaway. Oh, like TripAdvisor.
Oh.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Jordan Fabian covers the White House for The Hill, in studio with us at the top of the next hour. Peter.
So according to TMZ,
yes,
Dr. Ben Carson was in South Carolina and he was having dinner this past weekend. And he was having scrambled eggs, grits, and ham biscuits
for dinner
when a tooth fell out. A tooth fell out of his head and fell onto his plate. A bystander said that they saw him look at it, pick it up, put it in his pocket. So we'll have to see if he's lost a tooth.
But what does this mean? You don't a tooth just doesn't
just
fall
fell out.
Was it a false tooth?
I don't know. I don't know.
Let's find out more.
TMZ's on the case.
TMZ, get on. Yeah, can't wait for the follow-up here.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Here we go on Thursday, May 14. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bill Press Show. Good to have you back and good to see you this Thursday morning on Free Speech TV and worldwide on our video stream, Talker TV, youtube.com/Talker, TAWKR TV. The latest on the Amtrak crash in Philadelphia. Now we know up to 7 dead, almost 200 were injured somewhat. That's with a passenger total of 238 people on board that train, plus 5 crew members. We now know also that that train was going around the curve at 106 miles an hour when the posted speed limit is 50 miles an hour. We still don't know what happened. An investigation is underway, but certainly the speed appears to be the cause of that crash. And yet, yesterday, even though the infrastructure for Amtrak is so old and badly needed of repair, the House Republicans yesterday voted to cut Amtrak's budget for next year by 20%, so we can have more accidents like this. President Obama today, after a big dinner at the White House last night, is off to Camp David with the leaders from the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait, and others that are here for a one-day summit up at Camp David. The president and the Gulf leaders will hold a news conference this afternoon at 5 p.m. to announce results of their summit. Meanwhile, just 24 hours after President Obama's trade deal crashed in the Senate Democratic leaders have come to a compromise agreement with the White House, which will permit that trade deal to get through the Senate, but it's going to have a much, much tougher time in the House of Representatives. And the House yesterday did a good thing, voted to end NSA's massive spying on your phone calls and mine. All of that to talk about and a whole lot more here on this Thursday edition of the Bill Press Show. Good to have you with us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
I'm a Piston fan. Their slogan was, "We come to work." That's what Detroit about. That's why they used it. It's a team thing. They won 2 championships, a team. There was no star. No mayor can come in here and be a star. It's a team thing. No governors can come in here and think you can do it by yourself. It's a team thing. You got communities. They got ideas, too. The only thing wrong with Detroit, people have lost hope here. Residents, city workers, so much corruption. They lose hope. But I grew up here. I love this city. I think it can come back. I've been working for the city 24 and a half years. Within the last 10 years, we took 4 pay cuts and then an additional 10% wage cut. I've lost a home.
When you take all of the decisions out of the city of Detroit, all of us, then what do you have? Exactly what we got. A lot of problems. Every time the city seems to fall into a problem, it's always on the backs of us workers.
You wake up out of a dead sleep and you jump behind the wheel and take off driving and try to get everybody there safe, not knowing really what you're pulling up to. I'm not eligible for Social Security, so the pension is my sole salary at this point.
We've been in business here 39 years. We've seen a lot of changes in Detroit. The area was a lot of industry, a lot of city workers. It's getting very tough for the city workers. It's getting tough for us as a business people.
Response times are increasing because of the closing of companies, which takes your insurance rate through the roof. So all the things that affect us affect the citizens.
I worked for the city in different capacities for 29 years. I feel like an old jacket. They use me up and they throw me away. In my condition, nobody's gonna hire me. I'm 68 years old. Half the times, I can't get my blood pressure medicine. It's either feeding myself, blood pressure, or paying bills.
$754. By the time they take all the deductions for I have my car insurance, my house insurance, and my health insurance taken out. So the time they take all that, I'll get about $300 after they take all that out. I don't understand it. I can't see how the governor is allowing this to happen and what they're doing and they want to blame it all on the seniors. Not only the seniors, but the city workers. And we worked hard. I know I worked hard.
I've been in Detroit since 1946. I was 14 years old when I came in. I don't live large at all. I wish I could. I haven't opened the last time I've been shopping. I only get $1,100, and I'm 81 years old, and I need every penny that I can get and that I do get. And I'm very, very upset about the idea of them taking away my pensions that I worked 30 years for. I think it's terrible that they talk about Detroit like they do, because Detroit has been very good to me.
I have a lot of city workers coming in with their uniforms on, Detroit Water Department, Police Department, Fire Department. I get a lot of people, the Border Patrol come in. So if I lose that customer base, I'm going to be in a position where I might have to close down. If they take away their pensions, if they start cutting jobs, it's going to cut into a large percentage of not only our business, but other businesses that are in the city of Detroit. We're here. We've been here for 26 years. We're still trying to do business in the city.
Detroiters are survivors. They tough, they adapt, but only can do so much when your politicians ahead of you and we're not on the same team. We're not gonna let Detroit be erased, bulldozed, where we're gonna fight to the bitter end. Detroit gonna survive.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
No more NSA spying, says the House of Representatives. Overwhelming bipartisan vote yesterday, now goes to the Senate. A little message there. Maybe it's time to bring Edward Snowden back. Give him a ticker tape parade down Wall Street. Oh, maybe we won't go that far. Hey, hello, everybody. What do you say? It is Thursday, May 14. This is the Bill Press Show. Good to see you today. Thank you for joining us. We are here in our nation's capital. We're on Capitol Hill, actually, right in the heart of the action, and our studio here, booming out to you coast to coast nationwide, here on your local progressive talk radio station. We're here with you on Free Speech TV as well on the Dish Network and DirecTV, and worldwide, joining you on our video stream, youtube.com/TalkerTV. Good to have you with us today. And don't forget, there's a little town hall every morning. You're part of the program. We want to hear from you what it all means to you, the news of the day. So give us a call at 866-55-PRESS, or you can send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show, whatever we're talking about, or on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. As you know, get out of here after doing the show every day. Take a little stop at the gym, and then head down to the White House for the briefings at the White House, where I'm joined by a lot of good friends.
In case anybody wants to stalk you, now we know your whole routine.
But you don't know what gym. Or what machine.
It's one between here and the White House, I
think. Anyhow, joined down at the White House by several friends, including covering the White House for The Hill, filling the big shoes of Justin Singh, Jordan Fabian, who joins us in the studio for the first time this morning. Hey, Jordan, good to see you.
Good to see you, Bill.
Good job down there at the White House every day.
Thank you.
Jordan sits 2 rows ahead of me at that, so it's a little...
Not that you're jealous.
No, not that I'm jealous or not, but yeah. Well, it's an interesting crowd down there every day, right?
Yeah, I think someone once compared it to the cantina from Star Wars, where you have a lot of interesting characters filling the room, you know? Yeah.
I think that's about right.
I'm not sure I'm glad to be part of that crowd or not now.
Embrace it, man.
Anyway. Well, you think of yourself as Han Solo. And
right.
Yeah, there you go.
Good guys in there.
Yeah. There I am. We got the team here, our team, too. This is sort of like Star
Speaking
Wars,
of the Star Wars cantina.
Right. Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy.
Hey,
guys.
good morning.
Yes, Jamie Benson here, the new kid on the phones, ready to take your calls. And Monty Counsel is in as our videographer for the day, keeping us looking good on Free Speech and on Talker TV. With a lot of news, a little bit later in this hour, we're going to be talking with Kris Van Cleave, CBS transportation correspondent. He was at the top of the CBS news last night, and he'll be here with us to bring us the latest what we know about the accident and the investigation underway on the Amtrak accident in Philadelphia. In the next hour, Congressman Javier Becerra. head of the Democratic caucus in the House, will be in studio with us to talk about prospects in the House on the TPP. We'll talk a little bit about that too, Jordan. And we'll get right to the news of the day with Jordan Fabian from the Hill. But first, Peter.
This is the Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. Okay, so yesterday I told you that Kim Jong-un had executed his Minister of Defense. That was the report.
Well, but wait, with good reason, though.
Well, he fell asleep in a meeting with Kim Jong-un, so he executed him. Well, that might not be the case. That was the report from South Korea's spy agency, and yesterday they walked that story back. They said that they cannot confirm the execution of the defense minister, but that he has, at the very least, been exiled and kicked out of all of the meetings, and he's like, there's no trace of him whatsoever. So they're saying that he might not have been executed, but he is no longer in the picture. But he still might have been executed. We just don't know.
But so and he hasn't been seen.
He hasn't been seen. They're keeping everything quiet, under wraps.
All right.
So we'll see. I'll keep you posted on that story.
So don't doze off at the briefings.
I think that's,
Need some more coffee, Jordan?
The big takeaway.
Moral of the story.
That's the big takeaway.
Eric is taking notes so people are not off.
Right.
I believe that.
Facebook yesterday made a big announcement, or actually this happened on Tuesday, late Tuesday, they made a big announcement that the minimum wage for Facebook is going up to $15 an hour. Now, this is not probably a big deal for people who work high up in Facebook because they already make way more than $15 an hour. But this is going to extend to contractors that they use at Facebook, right? So they have plenty of contractors who work with Facebook and headquarters, things like that. So if you want to do work with Facebook, your minimum wage must be $15 an hour.
Well, good for them.
Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
It's not a bad deal. And we've talked a lot about the recall of Bluebell ice cream and Ginny's ice cream. You can't buy any of that stuff right now. Still. They found out the location, and they isolated the location for Ginny's. They're still working on the Bluebell stuff, but you can't buy it. It's not in store. But you can get Bluebell ice cream on Craigslist. I do not recommend that you do this. I just want to put that out there. Do not do this. But people in Texas, primarily, because that's where it's everywhere, the Bluebell ice cream, have had Bluebell ice cream in their freezers for a long time. So they're going onto Facebook and saying, if you want to buy this tub of Bluebell ice cream that is pre-Listeria outbreak, I have some for you. People have them on Facebook, or excuse me, on Craigslist for $10,000.
No way.
For the crazy cookie dough. In fact, one person has up a $500 pint of Bluebell homemade vanilla, but it's half eaten. But this way, the seller says, I promise you there's no listeria. I've eaten half of it, and I'm fine. You can have the other half for $500.
It can't be that good.
Can't be that good.
Nothing is that good.
Nothing. There's no ice cream in the world. I've had Bluebell ice cream. Okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's good ice cream. Come at me, Texas. But $500 for half a pint of no, never. Don't do it.
You know what I was just thinking? This might be. We never. Did anybody put this together? This might have been the first wave of Jade Helm 15.
Oh, good. I hadn't thought about that.
The Pentagon might have sent the poisonous ice cream out there
Stay
first.
woke.
You should ask about this in the briefing.
Stay woke. Yeah, bring that up to Josh Earnest.
Did anybody tell Greg Abbott or Ted Cruz?
Yeah.
Oh man! All right. So, Jordan, let's start with the trade deal. I mean, the president clearly this is his number one priority right now to get this TPP passed, and clearly he could not do it. He had the support of the Republicans, John Boehner, Mitch McConnell, Republicans in the House and Senate, but they alone could not deliver it. So clearly he needed Democratic votes. He had a strange strategy, it seems to me, to get these Democratic votes, which was attack and demean them every chance he could get. Didn't work, did it?
Yeah, I think it did backfire to a degree. Obviously he singled out Elizabeth Warren, and the White House says, he was asked about her, but, he said she's wrong. She is making up things about this trade deal. And if you talk to House Democrats...
And she's a politician.
And she's a politician.
Like
right.
everybody else.
Exactly.
I was thinking, so what are you, Barack Obama? Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, the House Democrats haven't been fond of that. I mean, they're openly saying, this is something that... we don't want the White House lecturing us on this issue. We know just as well as you do about all these trade issues, and we have a difference of opinion here. So the White House had to do a little bit of cleanup work. I thought, I don't know if you agree, but I thought the tone in the briefing changed a little bit yesterday, where Josh was emphasizing, well, Elizabeth and I in the White House agree on 99.9% of the issues, and we're all on the same side here. It's not a difference of values, is what they said.
Yeah,
so
right.
There was a little bit of a change in tack there.
But what I think that where the White House is maybe not coming clean is the dispute, and it got pretty heated yesterday. We watched between Josh and Jim Acosta from CNN over the issue of transparency and openness. And Josh keeps insisting that Elizabeth Warren is particularly wrong. What seems to really irritate them is that she says this is not an open document, right? That not everybody has access to it, and they keep saying, yes, they do. Members of Congress, they can go in that room and they can read that document. Yeah, but you can't read it, Jordan. I can't read it. So it seems to me at the most, or at the worst maybe, or the best even, we have the White House saying the document says one thing, and members of Congress saying the document doesn't have that in it or something. But you and I have no way of judging which one is right.
Right. And I think that, the White House and Democrats are talking past each other a little bit here, because the White House is saying, well, members of Congress have access. And then what members of Congress is saying, well, everyone doesn't have access, like you said. And there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And I think it is an issue, but at the same time, I do see the White House's point that if you're negotiating this broad deal, and there's so many parts of it, that you don't necessarily want to, show your hand in those negotiations before the deal is done. So I see the point there, but I also see that if you're an opponent of the deal, this is something you're going to seize on, because you can pretty much say anything if everything is under wraps.
We've had probably 20 members of Congress in the studio here since this whole thing started, including John Garmendi was here yesterday. And I've asked every one of them about this idea that, what do you mean? You got total access to it. And they point out, yeah, there's a secured room they're allowed to go into. The document is there. They can't take a copy with them.
Right.
They can't make any notes. They can't take their cell phone. They can't take a staffer. They can't take, an economic expert or anybody in with them. And I don't know how long this document is. I was trying to find out yesterday. But there are 29 chapters, right? I mean, it's 1,000 pages long anyhow, right? And they're expected to be able to go in there for an hour or something and read this thing and then know all about it and remember all the points. It's crazy.
Yeah, under the circumstances, it is really tough for them to really understand everything that's going on. And, these trade deals contain everything from like chocolate regulations to shoe tariffs. Yeah. So there's just a lot to digest there. Yeah, it's hard to understand all that.
So what happens now? So we know it failed first time in the Senate. President Obama called Democrats down to the White House, the key Democrats that he needed. They came around. They're going to get it through the Senate. And then
it goes to the House, and there's going to be a much tougher vote there. I think right now there's around 15 to 17 House Democrats who are saying they're going to vote for it. I think that number will increase a bit once the bill moves over there. But they're going to have a tough time. I think it really depends on the number of House Republicans who say they're not going to vote for it. And that number is sort of hard to pin down.
Have you seen the president exert this much energy and effort on any other issue?
I got to think back to healthcare to think of something where there was this much of a concerted push by the president himself. He really is making an aggressive push here. But I had someone tell me yesterday, he hasn't done this in the past, so there's not a huge reservoir of goodwill he has when something goes wrong, like the vote yesterday, where he can say, hey, buddy, do me a solid here, pretty much. So the Hill outreach right now, I think, is appreciated by members, but a lot of them are asking, where's this been for the last 6 years?
No, you're right. Absolutely. I've heard that very same thing.
Yeah.
That he is coming to them now, and yet they're saying, wait, like what you just said, where have you been?
Right.
Right. And so there's not a reservoir of goodwill built up that he can draw on when he needs the votes at this time. I think it's very uncertain what's going to happen in the House. And the other thing, before we move on for this, is back to the comments about Elizabeth Warren. Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio said he thought that they bordered on, if not, were actually sexist comments. The White House, it seems, and here's Josh Earnest, he repeated this at our briefing yesterday morning on Morning Joe, where Josh says that they're kind of waiting for an apology.
Senator Brown is a stand-up guy, and I'm confident that after he's had a chance to take a look at the comments that he made yesterday, that he'll find a way to apologize.
They're sending a message out there to Sherrod Brown. You crossed the line. We expect you to apologize. Do you think he will, or do you think he should?
You know, I don't see any signs that he's going to at this point. I mean, he's had a whole day and he hasn't really said anything, so I don't necessarily expect that he's going to do it. But I don't know. I thought it was a little unfair. He does call pretty much everyone by their first name, and if you have an issue with that, maybe that's like an issue. But to go the sexist route, maybe that was a little over the top.
Yeah, I think it was too.
Yeah.
And I have a great fan, a great admirer of Sherrod Brown. I would not have said that, but at the same time, this is it's hardball, right? Mm-hmm. If the president's out there basically dressing down the Democrats, I think he can expect a little bit of heat coming back too. Yeah. So I would be surprised to see an apology. Summit today. Today, the one-day summit. Can we expect anything to come out of it?
I think you're going to see a few little things. I think the president's going to try to promise, greater cooperation with these Gulf states on missile defense, maybe do some more joint military exercises. But I don't think either side's really going to come away happy here. The Gulf states have serious concerns about this Iran nuke deal, and obviously President Obama's all in on this. So I think that's just a reality that's going to be tough or a difference that's going to be tough to bridge at this summit.
Yeah, and I don't see how you could get that many people together with that many issues in front of them and have one day. I mean, not even one day, right? I don't know. They may have 6 hours of serious meetings and come up with any real agreement.
Right. They had a dinner last night, too. But, I mean, yes, it's a very limited amount of time. It's like less than 48 hours they're actually together. So, to call it a summit may be a stretch. But, look, I think that the president is aware of how this Iran deal is causing a problem for him with his Gulf allies. Right. And, it's dangerous for him because countries like Saudi Arabia are saying, hey, we want our own nuclear program now that Iran is going to have capacity. And, proliferation in the Middle East would be a huge problem for the U.S. So, he realizes this is a problem and he's trying to do something about it.
Yeah, but at least the president will have a chance to smooth things over with our Gulf allies, including Saudi Arabia today. Jordan Fabian here from The Hill. It's thehill.com, and we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back here on The Bill Press Show this Thursday morning.
This is The Bill Press Show.
I have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty.
my power.
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Here we go now at 26 minutes after the hour. We're talking just news in general and White House in general with Jordan Fabian, who is a White House reporter for The Hill. Kris Van Cleave from CBS News joins us at the half hour. How do you assess, let's say the president gets some legislation on trade, maybe not everything he wants, but gets, basically is able to negotiate a trade deal. Is that sort of it for the second term? I mean, is this his sort of last hurrah, or how do you assess now the
I think there's a couple things left. I mean, they have the trade deal. Obviously, they need to finish the Iran nuclear talks. And there's a big climate agreement that's coming up in the fall that I think will be important for the president. But beyond that, it's hard to pinpoint what would come after that until the lame duck thing sort of kicks in.
You sort of have a feeling of a glide path around the White House now, in terms of they know we're sort of toward the end, and these are the things you want to get done, and after that, it's just no.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely coming into focus, and it's sort of, yeah, like you said, I think there's like the trade deal, and there's a few things left this summer, and then after that, there's nothing huge coming on the horizon other than the 2016 campaign, which is when his successor will come.
Do you think he'll play a role in that?
I think so. I think Hillary will half him out at some events. I think she will use him in a targeted way, but I don't think he's going to be out there 24/7. Do you?
No. I think I think he'll, assuming she's a nominee, he'll help her whenever he can, but it's not going to be full time. Yeah. No. He'll be building his library. Hey, Jordan, great to see you. See you later today. Thanks for coming in.
This is the Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. nicely done. I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
Here we go now at 33 minutes after the hour. It is Thursday, May 14. It is The Bill Press Show. We are coming to you live from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., booming out to you coast to coast on your local Progressive Talk radio station and simulcast, of course, on Free Speech TV. Investigators on the scene in Philadelphia, a scene of the Amtrak crash Tuesday evening, 7 dead, some 200 needing medical attention. And also, with word now that this train was going 106 miles an hour when it hit that curve just north of 30th Street Station in Philadelphia. How could it have happened? Who's responsible? What do we know? We go to Philadelphia right now and talk to CBS correspondent Kris Van Cleave, who's been reporting on this and on the scene since Tuesday night, joining us on our newsline this morning. Hey, Kris, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Bill. Great to be here.
How is it possible that this train, where the speed limit was 50 miles an hour, was going 106 miles an hour? What do we know?
Well, that is the question that everyone's asking. NTSB investigators are trying to find that out. They know the train was going 106 miles an hour as it began to enter the curve. That is when the engineer applied the maximum emergency braking. A few seconds later, when the data recorder stopped recording, the train was going at 102 miles an hour. Presumably, that's the speed the train was moving when it derailed. So the question is, how does that happen? Well, through his attorney, the engineer, Brandon Boshton, says he doesn't remember the crash. He was treated, he was injured in the accident. He was treated yesterday, brought to a Philadelphia police station. Police say he left without offering a statement, left with his lawyer, and has not yet spoken to the NTSB. In fact, he doesn't have to speak to the NTSB if he chooses not to, but the National Transportation Safety Board certainly hopes that they can interview him and get some kind of an account as to what happened. There is a forward-facing video camera in the engine as well. Investigators have recovered that and presumably are looking at the video to see if that can tell them anything. But the big question is, why was this train going so fast at a curve where the maximum speed limit is 50 miles an hour?
So it's possible that he blacked out, or that he was just trying to go as fast as he could, or that the train system malfunctioned. I guess all of those are possible. We don't know. Are any other theories about it?
Well, the NTSB will tell you that it's too early for theories. They don't know what happened yet.
Yeah.
What they're going to do is they're going to look at, was the train functioning properly? Was there any sign of a malfunction? Was there any sign of distraction? They're going to spend a lot of time looking into the engineer. They're going to build a timeline for his 72 hours leading up to the crash. Did he get enough rest? Where was he in his shift? They have a maximum 12-hour shift they can work. So they'll look at, was fatigue an issue? Was distraction an issue? Were signals operating incorrectly along the tracks that perhaps made him think he was in a different spot? There's lots of things they have to look at, and they're really going to go step by step, just like they do in a plane crash investigation, and really re-engineer this crash.
There's been a lot of talk. Kris Van Cleave, again, our guest, CBS correspondent covering transportation issues for CBS Evening News, on the scene with Scott Pelley at the scene last night. Kris, there's a lot of talk about this positive, I think they call it positive train control.
Yes.
And what is that, and why wasn't that already in operation at this point?
So this is mandated technology that Amtrak is in the process of installing. The deadline to have it installed is the end of the year. And they have it on many portions of the Northeast Corridor. This is just one section where it has not been installed. And basically what positive train control is, the D.C. Metro system, for your listeners in D.C., has something similar to this, where the computer can drive the trains and then keep the train from going too fast. But basically, positive train control would allow Amtrak to sort of remotely slow down a speeding train. So if a train is going over the speed limit for an area, it triggers an alert, and the system slows the train down. The NTSB board member automatically, exactly. The NTSB board member that's leading this investigation, Robert Sumwalt, and I were talking yesterday, and he believes that if this technology had been in place, this is the type of accident that it is designed to prevent.
And it's already in place on part of the Northeast Corridor, but not here, not this stretch of track.
They are mandated by federal law to install it by the end of the year, and they have been installing it. But it is it takes time to do. And from what I understand from talking to safety folks, that New York north to Boston is pretty much complete, and it is still sort of spotty up and down between New York and Washington. That's where the work to install it has been going on recently, and it just hasn't been through this section.
And what is happening right now at the site of the accident? What are crews doing?
So today, there are two things happening. There are two cars still on the tracks. NTSB investigators are doing some 3D mapping of those. One looks like the engine, and the other is the most damaged train car. They've got a little bit more physical evidence they want to collect and diagram and map before they remove those. There are bulldozers out right now removing damaged pieces of track, getting ready to lay new track. Certainly one of the goals here is to get the Northeast Corridor back up and running. It is the busiest corridor for Amtrak and a vital transportation hub for people up and down the Northeast. So there certainly is a desire to get these repairs going so they can get the trains running again regularly. I can tell you from looking around here, some of the power poles that all the wiring is stretched on that helps run the trains were damaged. So they're going to have to be replaced. Some wires going to have to be restrung. That's going to take some time, and they can't completely do that with trains laying on the tracks.
Have they given any estimate of when Northeast that train service will be restored in that stretch of track?
They're taking it kind of day by day. Once all of the train cars are off the tracks, they can go in and assess what all needs to be repaired, and then they can start making those repairs. They're doing some of it now around the investigation, but with the NTSB investigators and the Federal Railroad Administration investigators out on the tracks, it limits some of the construction work you can safely do.
So in terms of laying new rail, for example, and that's going to take some time. They can't even start that until they get all the other cars off the track, of course, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they can do some of it. And they're already doing some of the work, but figure that the NTSB takes today to do their mapping. So maybe you start your work tomorrow, so with the goal of having things running by Monday. But that's pure speculation. It's kind of day by day at this point.
We're talking with Kris Van Cleave from CBS News, CBS correspondent covering transportation. You can follow him on Twitter at Kris Van Cleave, or follow him, of course, on CBS.com. Kris, have you had a chance to talk to anybody about the liability of Amtrak for a crash like this?
I think it's probably very early in the investigation to start thinking about liability. Until we know what was the cause, why it happened, but there obviously will be some action taken. You have a lot of people who are injured and killed, but I think that's something to think about down the line.
And there were questions yesterday, and I thought an excellent report by Nancy Cordes on the news last night about infrastructure. Now, we can't say yet, without the investigation being complete, that infrastructure was responsible for this crash. But it certainly does raise the question of the state of maintenance and everything on this Northeast corridor. What have you found on that?
Well, so the Northeast Corridor, this is aging. This is an example of aging infrastructure. Absolutely, some parts of the Northeast Corridor date back almost 100 years. Some of the infrastructure, and Amtrak is a government-funded railroad that Congress has to approve a budget for, and there's been a lot of deferred maintenance in this system, and how you pay for that, how you pay for infrastructure in general has been a real struggle for Congress to figure out. The transportation funding bill expires at the end of the month, and there is not a long-term solution at this point for the aging infrastructure issues in this country.
Yeah, you and I are both familiar with this, with the train service between Washington and New York. We use it all the time. When I heard Nancy Cordes or Scott or maybe you last night say that the signals, for example, on this stretch, some of them date back to pre-World War II, makes me a little less comfortable about using Amtrak.
Well, Bill, if you look at the number of structurally deficient bridges in this country, there's a lot of infrastructure that we take for granted, that we drive over, that we ride over, that is getting old. And, there is not unfortunately, money doesn't grow on trees, as the old saying goes, and we almost need a money tree to start replacing the amount of infrastructure that needs to be rebuilt.
Yeah. So final question, with NTSB there, have they given you any idea when they're going to have complete their investigation? What is their timetable? When will we really kind of know the answers to some of these questions we've been talking about this morning?
So NTSB investigations are a slow process. We'll get daily updates. Usually within 10 days, they try to put out a preliminary report. That may give us some indications as to really the center points of their investigation moving forward. But this will be a many months process because they're going to look at not only what caused this accident, but what are the lessons from it. The train cars on the Northeast Regional service they date back to the 70s. They are older. They're not necessarily as robust as the newer Acela cars. So they're going to look at, really, are they crash worthy? Should there be seatbelts in train cars? There aren't seatbelts here. So one of the things that they told me they're going to look at is, would seatbelts have made a difference?
Wow. That's funny, because when I go on a train, I automatically reach for my seatbelt, because we're so used to it now in cars. And, of course, there are none there. Well, look, it's a moving target, many aspects of it to cover, which keeps you very, very busy, Kris Van Cleave. So we doubly appreciate your taking time out to check in with us this morning. Thanks, Kris. Great work.
My pleasure, Bill.
All right. Talk to you again
care.
soon. Follow him on CBS News, CBS.com, Kris Van Cleave.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about $25,000.
I owe $23,000. I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan.
And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want, but lately that's been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to
10 minutes before the top of the hour. Amtrak crash raising the whole question of our crumbling infrastructure in this country. And isn't it ironic that yesterday, or cruel perhaps, that yesterday, less than 24 hours after the Amtrak crash, the Republicans in the House of Representatives voted to cut Amtrak's budget by 20%. So not only can they not keep up with the repairs and the updates that they need to do just on a regular basis, they're going to even have less resources if that holds, that 20% cut holds for next year, which just means we can look forward to more crashes like this. Jimmy is calling from down in Mobile, Alabama. Hi, Jimmy. What do you say?
Good morning. The President of the United States, over the last 6 years, have been talking about our failing infrastructure.
Yep.
The problem is that many Democrats and some Republicans and independents will not go to the polls to vote out the Republicans so that we can improve our infrastructure for everyone in the United States, employing many workers to do this, to improve our country today and also for the next generation.
No, well said, Jimmy. Absolutely. And, I mean, think of the jobs that would be created. I mean, you don't have to invent all kinds of new stuff, right? I mean, just the jobs that were created by and Kris Van Cleave mentioned this too. Our bridges are falling down. Our highways are not safe. Rebuilding those highways, rebuilding those bridges, rebuilding the tunnels, water treatment plants, sewage system plants, the electric grid, and, hello, our rail transportation system. The idea that on the Northeast Corridor, which let's say, what's the traffic? 22.
Yeah.
Look at this, Northeast Corridor. Can you believe this? 2,200 trains a day on the Northeast Corridor. 2,200 trains a day, and yet some of the train cars, as Kris Van Cleave just told us, used on that Northeast Corridor run date back to the 70s. Bridges, tunnels, 100 years old, and signal system pre-World War II.
It's crazy. This is crazy.
It is insane. The idea that we haven't had more serious accidents on Amtrak is really what's remarkable. Not that we had this one. And Jimmy is right. The people who oppose this, if people went to the polls and threw them out, be a great start to getting. This should not be a partisan issue. Not be just like you keep your own house repaired, or else the value of it goes down, right? The smart thing to do is keep our infrastructure up to date. Other countries do it. Why don't we? I'll be right back. President Obama's got a very, very busy day today with a lot of foreign leaders here from the Gulf region. We'll tell you all about it when we come back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, here we go. Hour number 2 winding down. Let's move into hour number 3. You may have to wait, will have to wait on Free Speech TV until 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 Central to watch hour number 3. Hope you do. But if you want to watch it right away, go to our video stream, youtube.com/TalkerTV. The House voting yesterday to end NASA's, not NASA, but NSA's phone collection spying. We'll have the head, one of the heads of the ACLU in here to talk about that a little bit later. And Congressman Javier Becerra, one of the part of the Democratic leadership of the House from California, will be here in studio with us. Hour number 3 coming up. Stay with us.
A few years ago, plastic bag waste in our city came to a tipping point. It was clear we had a bag problem. My department was tasked to reduce plastic bag consumption. We needed to come up with ways to change human behavior. So we asked ourselves,
should I get back?
What do people really hate?
Yep.
Getting punched in the stomach. Preliminary studies showed that the consequences weren't severe enough to warrant behavioral change.
Actually, can I get that double bagged?
So we thought, what do people hate more than getting punched in the stomach? Kissing Helga.
Hey, big boy.
People didn't find her so offensive after all, so we had to get creative.
How many bags? Okay, now, pour this ice water down your pants.
We tried everything.
Eat the threat. Defuse this bomb.
Even fighting your clone. After blowing through millions of dollars of government funds on research, I came up with a brilliant idea.
Why don't we just charge 5 cents per bag?
That's a stupid idea.
Would you like a bag?
Yes.
5 cents a bag.
5 cents? 5 cents? Do I still have the option of getting punched?
Honestly, I don't know how everyone else missed it.
Why don't you just get a reusable bag?
This is the Bill Press Show.
At the top of the hour, Legislative Counsel for the ACLU here with us to talk about the big action by the House yesterday, ending NSA's mass collection of our phone data. And we'll be joined later by Congressman Javier Becerra from California, the head of the Democratic caucus in the House. President Obama leaves the White House today about 10:30, up on his way to Camp David. And then he will be hosting the Gulf leaders for the summit at Camp David. They will be having working sessions throughout the day, then hold a news conference at 5 o'clock this evening to announce the results of their deliberations. The president will be back at the White House by 6:25 tonight, a one-day summit. We can only hope some good comes out of it. Let's go back for hour number 3
This is the Bill Press Show.
What they told us we were doing was going to rid the state of frivolous lawsuits. So we said, okay, let's vote for this.
Leading up to the 2003 effort in Texas, the insurance companies primarily, but also the medical industry, started this drumbeat. They were alleging that medical malpractice lawsuits were soaring and the cost of healthcare was going way up. They barraged the citizens of Texas with these frightening, scary messages that we were in some sort of crisis. But the reality was that simply wasn't true.
One of the things I think the public doesn't fully understand is that lawsuits are about a lot more than just seeking compensation for an individual plaintiff. By giving damages to the individual, the jury is sending a message about safety to the doctors, the nurses, the hospital, please change your ways. Make healthcare safer to protect all of us.
Bill and Kelly Putnam experienced a nightmare scenario. They're in the nursing home with their father. The nurse administers medication improperly. As a result, he started to choke on the medication, and Kelly was forced to provide CPR on her father while staff at the nursing home did nothing.
I was probably 6 inches away from my dad's eyes. He's no longer thrashing, he's no longer moving.
And so they took him to the hospital, they worked on him, cause of death, aspiration. Texas Board of Nursing ruled that the nurse not only did what we said she did, but she also said that the facility had her destroy the medical records for that day and create a new version. I decided to give a lawyer friend a call. I went through probably 10, maybe more. All of them I got the same letter back stating that because of tort reform, we cannot afford to litigate these types of cases.
What the 2003 restrictions did was make it economically unfeasible for most attorneys to take most medical malpractice cases. It's a cynical attempt to make it harder for people to go to court by making it harder for them to get representation.
I do remember when Patricia Whitman first contacted me, because as a cardiologist, I was pretty outraged when I looked at the medical records.
Patricia Whitman visited the emergency room complaining of chest pains. They look at her EKG. Doctor says, no, you've got indigestion, go home. The symptoms persist. Next day she goes in, sees a different physician. She's been having a heart attack.
Anyone looking at this EKG in a patient with chest pain has to consider that that patient is having an acute heart attack until proven otherwise. All of these abnormalities were essentially ignored, and a diagnosis of acid reflux was made in Patricia Whitman's case, and that was the wrong diagnosis.
The doctor came in and he said that I had substantial permanent heart damage and that I was, quote unquote, 100% disabled. Prior to the heart attack, I had a 3,500 square foot home that I took care of, and I was on my feet 8 hours a day going to cosmetology school. Then I would come home and cook for my kids and do whatever else needed to be done. I did it all. After the heart attack, I couldn't keep up with the house. I couldn't pay the mortgage. My life has changed a lot. I will never be able to do what I used to do. I have to depend on 5 heart medications that I have to take every day in order to survive. This is a letter from one attorney. It would be difficult to prove that the ER physician's conduct rose to the level of gross negligence. No attorney would take my case.
Tort reform involved a specific passage of language that said that a simple negligence standard no longer applied to emergency room care in Texas. The new standard was a gross negligence standard called willful and wanton.
You have to prove in court that that doctor saw me walk through the door and said, that's my next victim. And of course that doesn't happen. And so people like Patricia Whitman, who find themselves in the emergency room and are misdiagnosed or harmed, face almost no ability for accountability. If you look back and you break down the arguments made by the insurance companies and medical industry about the cost, quality, access of healthcare in Texas, by every metric, we're worse off today than we were 10 years ago. It has made life better and easier for a small group of corporate interests at the expense of the rest of us.
These corporations, they have no fear because they know that they're not going to be held responsible. It shouldn't be about money. But unfortunately, that's the only language these people speak. That's why we're out protesting.
We will stand out on the street in front of the facility with signs that state what happened and make sure that they understand that we're not going to go away and that what they did was wrong.
We must restore meaningful accountability in this state so that another family does not go through the same nightmare that they've been through. If enough people in the public say enough is enough, then politicians have to think twice. We're never going to be able to compete with the special interests in terms of campaign contributions and money. Where we have to compete with them is in boots on the ground. The more people that rise up and say, we want our rights back, then they have to think about it. And once we've made them think about it, then half the battle is won.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
The speed limit was 50 miles an hour. That Amtrak train was going 106 miles an hour when it struck that curve. And you wonder why there was an accident? Hey, hello, everybody. What do you say? It is Thursday, May 14. Here we go. The Bill Press Show. Coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. And our studio on Capitol Hill, just down the street from the United States Capitol building, where there was a big news yesterday. The House of, well, on several fronts, but the big news, biggest of all, is the House of Representatives, by an overwhelming bipartisan vote, said NSA shall not be the ones to capture and to store all of our phone data anymore. The House wants to end that practice. Now we'll see what the Senate does. Great to see you today. Thank you for joining us. You know, we'll tell you what's going on. You tell us what it means to you. We want to hear from you on your news on our phone line at 866-55-PRESS. Just give us a call or send us your comments on Twitter if you prefer that, at BP Show, or on Facebook at facebook.com/BillPressShow. Yes, with that big vote in the House yesterday on NSA, this follows by about 10 days a decision by the Federal Court of Appeals for the 2nd District that what NSA was doing was actually against the law under Section 215 of the Patriot Act. That lawsuit brought by the ACLU and the Legislative Counsel for the ACLU here in Washington, D.C., Neema Singh Guliani, joins us here in studio to talk about this issue. Neema, thank you for coming in. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I'm happy to be here.
You guys have done really good work on this issue, and we've been following it all along, so we'll look forward to getting the update from you. And you join our team here, Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, good morning.
Here we are.
Yes, indeed. Jamie Benson is on the phones, ready for your calls at 866-55-PRESS. He's the filter you got to get through to get on the air, but he's a nice guy. He'll be all right.
Take it easy.
Sometimes.
Take it easy
Yeah,
on it when
that's
you
right.
call in.
And Monty Kanzler, our videographer on the video side of things, keeping us going and filling in for Cyprian Bolding today. A little bit later in the program, Congressman Javier Becerra from California will be joining us. He's part of the Democratic leadership, head of the Democratic caucus, and we want to check in with him particularly about the prospects for the President's Trade Protection Authority legislation once it gets to the House, assuming it gets to the House. We'll get right into it about NSA, the big vote yesterday, but first, Peter.
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. We'll file this one in the category of you win some, you lose some.
Yes.
4 professional sports teams from Washington, D.C. had games yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
The Nationals won. They beat the Diamondbacks in dramatic fashion. Then the Wizards were taking on the Hawks last night in Game 5.
I don't know on the Nats thing, because you know,
I know
if there's a Nats
you were
game,
watching.
If there's a Nats game, it is on in the press household,
right? Because
Carol never misses a game. So I happened to join her for a little bit yesterday, just in time to see. So his name, Michael Taylor. Bryce Harper's out of the game.
Yeah, he got thrown out. He got ejected.
He was right.
Yeah, he got heated on an umpire. They tossed him out.
They tossed him out. So this Michael Taylor taking his place. Bases are loaded. Yeah. Bottom of the 9th. And
top of the 9th. It was top of the 9th.
Top of the 9th. I always get it backwards. 1 out, and he steps up and hits that grand slam home run. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it's a dramatic fashion. Not so. It was still dramatic, but it didn't turn out so well for the Wizards. They lost to the Hawks in Game 5 in Atlanta. Also, speaking of Major League sports team, the DC United yesterday played Orlando, a game that they won, and then the Capitals curse strikes again. They lost in Game 7 against the Rangers, so they are eliminated from the NHL playoffs. So 2 wins, 2 losses. We'll split them, but the 2 losses.
Too bad for the Caps, but the Wizards are still alive.
The Wizards are still alive. Keep hope alive.
Tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night we'll have a game. Yeah, Game 6. Got to win it. We go to Muncie, Indiana, where a county fair in Muncie has outlawed hog wrestling.
Oh, no.
They put it up to a vote, as a matter of fact.
Isn't that terrible?
Not the hog wrestling.
Anything but the hog wrestling.
Yeah.
They've taken hog wrestling from us, Bill.
Yeah.
So they had a petition, and people signed it, and overwhelmingly said that they thought that the hog wrestling was sadistic and barbaric, and they have canceled the event. So if you want to go wrestle a greased hog, you're going to have to go somewhere other than Muncie, Indiana. Because it ain't happening.
That ruins my birthday plans.
Yeah, but who is getting in with the hog? You or Andrew?
Yeah, right.
It'll be me, of course.
Yeah, I've wrestled a greased hog before.
No way.
Yes, I have.
Who won?
What haven't you done,
That was the first Mrs.
Peter?
Ogburn, by the way.
Who won?
The hog won. The hog won. And the new phone made by Japanese telecom giant NTT Docomo will actually have a new technology that we haven't seen yet. You've seen on Apple they have this Touch ID where you can pay for things with your fingerprint, right?
Yeah.
Like you put the card on your phone and you pay with the Touch ID. This one scans your eyes. It's an eye-scanning phone to pay for things. Something I don't think that I need. But it's coming to the market, and so, who knows? We'll see if people want it.
They use that eye scanning technology now for TSA, don't they?
They do,
Yeah,
and there are some computer programs that will watch your eye movement, like what you're looking at on a page to track your eye movements. I'm anti this. I don't think we need this.
It's a little spooky.
It's a little weird.
Yeah.
No, I don't want it either.
All right.
So we'll just check out of that one.
Big news stories.
So, Neema, so the House of Representatives yesterday considering legislation which would not end NSA's spying, but would limit it in the sense that the telephone companies hold the data, right, until NSA may need a particular piece of data. Is this better than the system that we have today, and where's the ACLU stand on it?
Well, the good news is that Congress is finally debating NSA reform and surveillance. The bad news, you hit the nail on the head, is that the legislation doesn't go far enough. It makes some incremental steps forward. It shifts the data to the phone companies. But the reality is, even under this new framework, the government would still be able to get lots of information about innocent people who've got nothing to do with terrorism, and they'd be able to keep that information. And that's still very, very concerning.
So this thing is called the USA Freedom Act, is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
The USA Freedom Act of 2015.
Right. They always give these highfalutin names to it. But it passed yesterday in the House 338 to 88, right? Now, which certainly indicates a lot of bipartisan support. Where were the people vote against it? Where they think we ought to continue, NSA ought to continue the spying, or they think we ought to end it altogether?
There were both. One of the interesting things about this issue has been that it spans party lines, and there's a very broad coalition of people who support putting limits on the NSA's activities. You've got companies, you have private citizens, Democrats, Republicans. And so some of the no votes you saw in somewhat different from other pieces of legislation were people who said, look, this legislation just doesn't go far enough. We want more limits on what the NSA can do and how they can get information from Americans.
This Section 215 expires June 1. Right.
Nothing like a deadline to get Congress moving.
Right, exactly. After ignoring this issue for how long have we been talking about it? At least the last couple of years, right?
The last couple of years, and frankly, some of the concerns that have been expressed now, we've had for over a decade.
So there are three options, it seems, as I see it, and there may be three camps on the Hill, right? You've got the Mitch McConnell camp, which is everything NSA is doing is great. Let's keep it going, right? You've got the Rand Paul camp, which is the ACLU camp, I would say, if I may, that everything NSA is doing is wrong. Let's stop it. Let's end it. And then you've got this in between, which is the USA Freedom Act. Even with some progressives, like the supportive progressives like John Conyers in the House and Pat Leahy in the Senate, who say, well, we can't end it altogether, but what we can do is, what this bill does, is leave the information with the phone companies until NSA says they need a particular information on a particular individual, correct?
Right. Yeah. And I think, before talking about the specifics of the legislation, it's important to understand exactly what the NSA was doing and what we know is happening now. The government was collecting the phone records of every single American. That's who you call, what time you call them, how long you spoke to them. If you talked to your therapist at 3 a.m, the government had a record. If you called a suicide hotline or talked to your priest, or frankly called your ex-boyfriend, the government had a record of it. And that's really, a reach that nobody anticipated the government would take.
Mm-hmm. And that, but now so should we take comfort that the phone company will still have that kind of, do they collect this information anyhow, the phone companies, and how long do they keep it if they do?
The phone companies keep a lot of this information for their own business purposes. But notwithstanding that, the notion that the government can get, hundreds or maybe thousands of phone records of people who have no connection to terrorism, and they can get this information without getting a probable cause warrant. I think it's very concerning. I mean, this information is some of the most intimate details of people's lives. It's not unimportant information. And so given that, really narrowing the government's ability and putting in place a much stricter process to say, look, you can't get this information unless you can show there's probable cause and that you have reason to believe that someone actually has a connection to terrorism. I mean, that's really the crux of this debate.
Well, I guess, and by the way, I'm with you on this issue, but I just want to understand. But if this bulk data doesn't exist, and let's say, so we'd get rid of it, right? And then the NSA discovers that, Peter Ogburn is talking to some ISIS guy, in whatever, in Yemen, and they want to prove it. If the records are not there, how can they access his phone records or find out what he's up to in order to protect us, the rest of us Americans?
One of the interesting things is that this program has existed for over a decade. And so we actually have the benefit of analysis over how useful really is this program. I mean, we hear a lot from the other side saying, look, we need this information.
Yeah. I guess that's what I'm getting to.
Right. And there's been 2 independent oversight boards that have looked at this program where everybody's records have been collected. And what they've concluded is that after all of this time, after millions of dollars, this program hasn't helped stop an act of terrorism and hasn't made a substantial difference in any terrorist investigation. And so I think there's really a need to call into question the very premise of your question that this program is even useful from a national security perspective.
All right, so then what would the ACLU want to see? What system should be in place? I mean, the NSA or the Department of Homeland Security has to do its job. How would they do its job absent 215?
Yeah, and I think that's right. No one is saying that the government shouldn't be able to take steps to protect national security. Obviously, they should be able to take those steps. But they have existing laws that provide, a much stricter framework to do their job. The NSA should have a process where if they have probable cause and they get a warrant, they can get that information. And the reality.
So if they have a suspicion, they go to the court, they get the search warrant, they get the back of the records that they need. Is that right?
Exactly. And I think, just taking a step back, the debate right now is over Section 215 of the Patriot Act. That provision of the Patriot Act is set to expire on June 1st. It was never intended to be permanent. It happened in the wake of 9/11 when there was a lot of concern over national security. And there were concerns even at that time and subsequently that were expressed. And now we know that those concerns were legitimate. We know that the government used and abused Section 215. We had a court just last week that said what the government was doing was absolutely illegal. and it was cloaked in secrecy, even from members of Congress. And now that we have that information, now our eyes are wide open and we've seen exactly what's happening, the time is really just to put that provision to rest. We have enough powers with our government to do legitimate national security activities.
That's an important point. I think people have to recognize that if we do away with Section 215 and that part of the Patriot Act, it doesn't mean that NSA is out of business. It doesn't mean the Department of Homeland Security is out of business. It's just that our privacy is better protected, at least.
Exactly.
Correct?
I mean, there's no reason that national security and privacy cannot go hand in hand. And the government can protect our national security while still ensuring that people's privacy isn't invaded and that their information isn't just collected unnecessarily.
It passed the House overwhelmingly, 338 to 88. What do you think is going to happen in the Senate?
Oh, if only I could predict the Senate.
I know. It's tough on a good day, right?
Yeah, it's tough on a good day. And, I left my crystal ball at home.
Right.
But in all seriousness, I think the Senate really has a choice. The Senate can either decide to move forward with this reform bill or a stronger one that is much more protective of people's privacy. They can decide to kind of rubber stamp another reauthorization of Section 215.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've heard this from...
Unlikely, but that's what Mitch McConnell wants.
Mitch McConnell has said that he wants to do that. I think that's kind of out of touch with not just his own party, but really the public who doesn't want this information collected anymore. And the third thing is Congress can say, look, we know that Section 215 hasn't been used the way it's supposed to be used, and we're going to put that to rest and really talk about large surveillance reform. I mean, this is a drop in the bucket at the end of the day. I mean, what's come out over the last 2 years is a scope of surveillance by the government on American citizens that members of Congress didn't know about, companies didn't know about, and the public is appalled of. And so that's a choice Congress will have to make.
And we wouldn't know about without Edward Snowden. So now what happens to him? Neema Singh Guliani here from the ACLU Legislative Council. Very, very, very important vote yesterday. Your thoughts, your comments, your reaction, 866-55-PRESS. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
They called her Little Sanju. She was born in a village at the foot of the Himalayas, the smallest of 7 brothers and sisters.
My family was very poor. To get by, we raised cows and we made small things for tourists out of bamboo. But we were always hungry, and no matter how hard he tried, my father was always in debt. When I was 11, my father told me I had to go to work making carpets. I had to leave with a man who took me to the carpet factory. The broker who took me away got paid, but they never paid my father anything. I made knots from 4 in the morning until 8 at night. There was never a day off. I was always hungry. I cut my fingers while weaving and had to weave with cut fingers. My hands began to look like my grandmother's. I cried every night. I thought the rest of my life would be only this.
It takes 1 million knots to make one 8x10 rug. In the 1990s, 1 million children were enslaved making carpets in South Asia. Then a hero entered the picture. It was you. If you knew how these carpets were made, you would no longer think they were so beautiful. And if you could choose a better rug, your buying power could end child slavery in the rug industry. From that simple idea, Goodweave was born. Here's how it works. To earn the Goodweave label, companies agreed not to employ children. Goodweave makes sure by conducting surprise inspections. When children are found, Goodweave helps them.
2 years ago, a Goodweave inspector named Grona found me in the factory. When I saw him, I was scared, but Grona put his arm around me and told me it would be okay. Drona took me to Hamrogar, a home for rescued carpet kids run by Goodweave. I'm the first person in my family to ever go to school.
Today, thousands of children like Sanju have been educated and rescued by Goodweave. And because you chose the Goodweave label, 3/4 of those million children weaving carpets are now free. And Sanju, with Goodweave's support, she's able to attend her village school and live at home where she belongs. Now that's a beautiful rug that tells a beautiful story. Stand with Sanju. Insist on the Goodweave label.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Here we go now at 27 minutes after the hour with Congressman Javier Becerra from California. Up next, in our next half hour here, we're talking NSA and the big vote in the House yesterday, the big decision by the appeals court last week, with Neema Singh Guliani, who is legislative counsel for the ACLU. Of course, it is aclu.org. I always say I have been a member for many, many years, and liberal or conservative, you should be too if you value your constitutional rights, because the ACLU is fighting for them and for us every day. What is going to happen to Edward Snowden? He's been vindicated, hasn't he?
You know, it's tough to know what's going to happen with Ed Snowden. And I think that the reality is that we wouldn't be having this conversation and we wouldn't be having this debate.
Absolutely.
But we shouldn't need an Edward Snowden to have this conversation. I think one of the most concerning things about the last several years has been just the number of things that were happening that the public didn't know about, and even members of Congress didn't know about. I mean, you have Jim Sensenbrenner, one of the people who wrote the Patriot Act. And he sits there today and says, look, I wrote this bill and I never intended it for it to be used this way. And that's a real problem. And, to address that, we need better transparency. We need to know what the Secret Intelligence Corps are doing. We need hard data about exactly how many people the government is collecting information about. And we need just much more transparency so that we're not stuck in the situation again where we need another Edward Snowden to have this debate.
You know what? And we also need watchdogs like the ACLU to let us know what our government is up to.
Yeah, that certainly helps.
ACLU.org. Thanks, Neema. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
This is the Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. When I say dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you come.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay, so who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
Here we go, 33 minutes after the hour. It is the Bill Press Show. We are in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, our studio in Capitol Hill, booming out to you coast to coast on your local progressive talk radio station, and also nationwide, simulcast on Free Speech TV. Good to have you with us, wherever you happen to be in this great land of ours today. And we are brought to you today by AFSCME. Good men and women of AFSCME, the largest public employee and healthcare workers union in the entire country, under the leadership now of President Lee Saunders. For more information, how they're making America happen, you can check their website at afscme.org, afscme.org. The Senate, the president getting a big defeat on TPA in the Trade Promotion Authority in the Senate. And then he called Democrats down to the White House. They reached a compromise, and it looks like today they're going to vote to move that legislation out of the Senate, where it goes to the House. What fate does it face in the House? Here's a man who knows. Javier Becerra is the head of the Democratic caucus, part of the Democratic leadership, representing California's 34th Congressional District, and a longtime good friend from California days. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thanks
Bill,
for coming in.
Good to be with you.
We've been working on getting you in the studio for a long time. So glad we finally made it.
Amen.
You're a busy man. So I have to ask you, first of all, our good friend, Senator Barbara Boxer, is not going to run for re-election. That opens up a big Senate seat from California. Are you going to run?
You want me to make a big announcement here?
Right here. Come on, why not? Let's sound the trumpets here. Let's go.
I am seriously considering it, but let's just say for right now that I will likely take another month, maybe 2, to make a final decision. It's a big move. I'm very fortunate that folks in California have let me play a pretty significant leadership role in the House of Representatives. Doing something like Senate would be phenomenal, especially because our state needs someone who can hit the ground running and really deliver. We have this syndrome, as you know, here in Washington, D.C., called the ABC syndrome, anywhere but California.
Yeah,
people think California is too big, it's too far away, and so it's tough for us to get our fair share. And so we need someone who understands what it takes to get our fair share. So I'm going to give it a great deal of thought. But whatever I do, I want to make sure that I can continue to serve the people of California.
And I know there are a lot of people in California who've encouraged you to take a serious look at it.
Yeah.
And the idea of being, I believe, the first Latino senator from California.
Right.
Would be something to shoot for. Right?
It's not bad being the fourth-ranking Democrat in the House of Representatives either.
Also, right. Yeah. So in that, if you didn't make the big announcement today, we look forward to whenever you make the big announcement.
I'll have to come back.
Do you think you have that much time to?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you do. It's tough in the sense that running for any office in California is very expensive. But look, I've got family to consider. I've got the whole issue of finances, how you make it happen, because you don't just win by showing up. You have to raise money these days. And it's an issue of doing what I think is going to be best for my state. Other than Nancy Pelosi, I think I'm in the highest ranking position in the House of Representatives as a California member.
Of course, yes.
Right. And so you don't just throw that away. It took me 22 years to get to that point, and we have to make sure that California is fairly represented in Washington, D.C. I'm not just going to give that up. I want to make a good decision. And at the end of the day, if it works for my family, it works in terms of actually winning, and it works for my state and the folks in Los Angeles who've helped me tremendously to get here, then I'll do it.
In your position as head of the Democratic caucus, you made headlines yesterday that Republicans should not count on Democrats to bail them out on fast track. What do you mean?
The Republicans fashioned a fast track bill which they knew was going to have opposition from Democrats from the get-go because it left out some very important elements to make trade work so that we catch the cheaters. You have to have enforcement in any kind of trade bill. And having run a bill that was essentially partisanly crafted, they should not be surprised that it's tough to get bipartisan votes. And now they're finding that they're losing partisan votes on the Republican side as well. And so they're having some issues about whether they can pass their own bill. Now they're asking us for support, but they don't want to make adjustments to address the job concerns, helping small businesses in America fight when it comes to making sure that they can compete in any trade deal. And so if they're not willing to make those accommodations to get Democratic votes, they should not expect us to bail them out.
I go to the White House briefings every day, Congressman, and I just wanted to run a couple of things that we are told every day, right, by you, and see what your reaction is. One is, and Josh Earnest yesterday, again, the press secretary, called this, they're calling it the the Progressive Trade Promotional Authority, that this is the most progressive trade deal ever crafted by any president. So that progressives like yourself and me, we ought to love this deal.
Well, either that means that our promotional authority to give fast track a chance has been extremely regressive, or we haven't yet figured out how to really do this in a way that deals with tomorrow, because there are portions in this fast track legislation. We're not talking about the trade deal with the Pacific Rim countries. That's a separate deal, right? We have a fast track bill to give the president a chance to put his trade deal, the TPP, directly before Congress with just one single vote, up or down. If you don't get TPA, Trade Promotion Authority legislation through, then that TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal, goes through Congress through the normal course of amendments and all the rest. And so TPA, this Trade Promotion Authority bill,
that's the first step. And
that's the bill that's up this week in the Senate. It's better than it has been, but who thinks that trade has worked totally well for America over the last 20-some-odd years since NAFTA? We've got to make improvements. We know what those improvements are, and we shouldn't say that we're going to close our eyes to those things that we need to do, especially going after the cheaters around the world, in order to make America's markets available to all these foreign countries for import.
So it's asking a lot to ask Congress to give up all of its authority to give the president a blank check, basically, and then when he's done with the deal, you get to vote up or down, no amendments.
Yeah, it is. The Constitution gives Congress the authority to move on trade deals. I can understand why it's important to let the president negotiate a deal on behalf of all Americans and then not have it tinkered with completely so that by the time Congress votes it out, it doesn't even look like what the president negotiated with all these countries. All these countries would say, we're not negotiating with you if that's a deal. So I understand the need to try to narrow the scope of how you deal with trade deals, but that doesn't mean that Congress should be left out of the mix when it comes to making the trade deals that under the Constitution, we're the ones that have to approve.
Now, have you read the deal? Have you read the...
I've read portions. I've read significant portions. I've read the portions that worry me most. But it's very difficult to read the whole thing because you're not allowed to. I can't carry around a copy of the trade deal. Now, the Trade Promotion Authority bill is different.
Yes,
that's just a bill. That's the mechanics
that's
of
the
making.
fast track.
That's
right.
the fast track. That's the mechanics of getting to trade deals. Yes, I have read.
That's the other thing that we're told every day, and we were told it again yesterday. Anybody who says they can't read this deal is not telling the truth because they can go anytime they want to this room and they can read that deal, so therefore they ought to just shut up, right? It's not as easy.
No, it's not.
Right?
No, it's not. Yes, I can read the deal, but I can't take notes and take those notes home with me. I have to remember what I read in a several hundred-page document.
You can't take a copy of it with you.
Can't take a copy with me. I can't have staff in there helping me understand some of these provisions. No, it's look. There is a great deal of confidentiality to it because these are arrangements with other countries that haven't yet publicized what they're willing to concede to get something from us. I get that. It's a negotiation. But at the same time, it's Congress's responsibility to vote on these things. It's Congress who decides if we have a trade deal, not the White House, not anyone else. And so Congress has to be well informed. Any constituent of mine, any voter would kick me out of office if I said I voted on this because I trusted some other politician to tell me if it was good or bad for the folks back home. Mm-hmm. I have a right to read it, and I should be able to understand it too.
Yeah, I have to tell you, from a journalist point of view too. Again, sitting at the briefing, I hear members of Congress say about these. They're not arbitration panels. It's what they're, these special appeals panel where the companies can. Whatever they call them, I forget.
They're essentially arbitration panels.
Arbitration panels. So members of Congress say this arbitration panel gives these companies the opportunity to really challenge our laws and maybe even overturn. The White House says that's not true because the deal says that. Well, my problem is I can't read the deal and find out what's in it or who's telling the truth, right? Yeah. Again, they just say you have to trust us. Right?
Yeah, that's the
trust but verify. Somebody said that from California.
Actually, quite honestly, for me, there's no element of trust in these things. Anytime someone wants access to our markets, which could imperil American jobs, I'm not about trust. I'm about making sure this is working, and I got to see it in the body of the deal. I got to see it in the contract. It's like you wouldn't go buy any car from any car dealer without having inspected the vehicle, having the paperwork on the vehicle. We should not accept any trade deal that opens up our markets to all sorts of foreign competition without knowing if we're going to have access to their markets in equal ways. And remember, we can trust our courts, even though I disagree with our court decisions sometimes. We can trust our courts far more than we can trust the courts of some of these countries who have less developed institutions. And if I have to trust those courts to do the right thing, and they haven't been doing the right thing in the first place, explain that to me.
All right, so it looks like TPA will get out of the Senate in its amended form or whatever. Then it comes to the House. If you had to guess today, does the president have the votes in the House for the fast track authority?
Well, first, I don't know if the Senate is such a done deal. The talk is that the votes will be there to get the
assuming
fast track
it does.
bill. Yeah, assuming it does. At this stage, the way Republicans are talking about the number of Republicans who are not there, it would be difficult to see it passing. I've been through numerous trade deals. Some I voted for, some I voted against. But one thing I do find is that there are ways to get votes. And it wouldn't surprise me if a number of things are done to try to get votes. Whether they get there or not, that they have to climb that mountain.
Number 4 in the Democratic leadership in the House of Representatives, Congressman Javier Becerra from California. Continue our conversation. Your calls always welcome at 866-55-PRESS. You'd be amazed how many calls we get from California early in the morning.
Amen.
They're up and early, up and at it. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
Yeah, I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found on the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
Up.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
11 minutes now before the top of the hour on this Thursday edition of the Bill Press Show with our good friend Congressman Javier Becerra from California, California's 34th Congressional District. Congressman, you know Peter Ogburn here,
Yes.
our executive producer.
I have a very important question I have to ask you, Congressman.
Shoot.
Is tonight the night that the LA Clippers are going to surprise the Rockets in the NBA playoffs?
Is there any doubt?
I can tell you,
any doubt?
good. Clippers look really good. They turned it on at the right time.
Let me tell you, I think Clippers are going all the way.
Yeah.
Do you?
I don't disagree with you. If they beat the Rockets, they already beat the Spurs. If they beat the Rockets.
By the way, you used to work for the Spurs, a big Spurs fan.
I'm a big Spurs fan.
So,
You take out the Spurs, you've done a big mountain climb.
yeah, I hold no grudge against the Clippers.
And I got to tell you, as much as I like my California teams, I think the Warriors, if they come out of this, you've got a Clipper team that has a lot of experience now. They've been through these playoffs. I think they're ready.
Yeah, yeah. All right. I had to get you on record.
And there's no one on the East who can take on the Western team.
Oh, forget it. The Eastern Conference, forget it. Whatever happens this season, it's going to be a Western team.
I'm going to get some hate mail now from the East Coast.
But we remain loyal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going to happen with immigration reform?
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Is it going to happen under this president?
It should. If it could, It would. I'm losing a lot of shoulds, woulds, coulds.
Right.
But it will. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it's a matter of when enough of my Republican colleagues will say, this is enough. Let's just get it done. The votes are there even today. If a bill were put on the floor like the Senate's bipartisan bill,
which passed what
bill,
now 2 years?
68 votes out of 100. Almost 2 years ago. If it were put on the floor, it would pass. But Republican leadership has restricted any ability to do immigration reform. We may see some immigration bills come up. Whether they're actually constructive, I don't know. But it's coming. And it's coming not just because it's the right thing to do. It's not just because our hearts are torn every time we see these families split apart. It's going to happen because businesses need predictability, and they have to know that there are rules under which they can operate so that they're not hiring people who don't have authorization to work. It's going to happen because it creates jobs. It's going to happen because it's good for the economy. And it's going to happen because at the end of the day, you can't, in the most important country in the world, have an economy that's based in some part on having 11 million people who operate in the shadows. Put all that economy, all that economic activity above board, take it out of the shadows, and you get higher tax receipts, you get less opportunity to exploit workers. It's good for everybody.
It's going to happen also, isn't it, because of political reality and political necessity, and maybe someday. We've seen this happen in California, Congressman.
Yeah. The sum of everything I said is making the political reality come before us soon.
You know, where Republican Pete Wilson, right, with Prop 187, went after the Latino community, and look where the Republican Party is today in California.
So goes California, so goes the nation. So it's coming. It's coming. I can feel it after being here 22 plus years. I know the difference because when I first got here in 93, as you mentioned, 94 was Prop 187. Then in D.C., Republicans started to try to replicate what Prop 187 did and Pete Wilson did. It's a different world.
What do you think of the job Jerry Brown's doing as governor of California? Second time around.
Let me tell you, anytime you can turn around an economy like that, it inspires people. It gives you enthusiasm. It makes you believe. It gives you confidence. And I tip my hat to the governor. He's done a pretty good job. I wish he would be a little bit more progressive in some of his actions. But it's hard to blame a guy who's been able to give Californians a sense that they're moving forward. So I tip my hat to him.
For a second act, right? It's a pretty good one.
Not a bad second act. Don't be surprised if some folks start to say Brown for president.
Boy.
It's out there.
Including Jerry Brown.
If he were 10 years younger, there's no doubt. He'd be ahead of the pack.
He's got ideas.
Yeah.
He now knows, after having experienced the governorship, mayor of Oakland, having run the Democratic Party, he's taking all those experiences and applying them. And I think that's what happens when you have some experience under your belt. You feel pretty confident about moving forward.
It's good to have him there, and it's really good to have you where you are, Congressman, as well. And if you move forward, then Godspeed to you. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming in.
We'll get some good things done. Thanks,
We'll get you back again soon.
Okay.
All right. Congressman Javier Becerra from 34th Congressional District in California. We'll be right back and wrap things up.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment, and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
The Parting Shot with Bill Press. This is the Bill Press Show.
Okay, boy, ran out of time there for a parting shot, but a little bit of breaking news here. Martin O'Malley says he is going to announce for whether or not he's running for president. I think he's going to announce he is on May 30. And George Pataki says he's going to announce on May 28. And Jeb Bush already announced yesterday, although he didn't mean to. He just made a mistake, and then he drew it back right away. Folks, thanks for being here today. Sabrina Siddiqui here tomorrow as a friend of Bill. So go out and have a great Thursday. Come back tomorrow morning for Sabrina. We'll be looking for you.
This
have a good one.
is the Bill Press Show.